This week on Eco Show, we'll be talking about dandelions. How can you cook with them? Where does the name come from? All sorts of good things about one of our favorite childhood plants, the dandelion. Next, we're going to be delving into research about the Hyrax. And what's a Hyrax, you might be asking yourself? Well, that's what you'll find out in our research section, but it's like a little mammal thing. And then in the news, we've got some really big news this week. We'll be talking about sails being reintroduced into cargo ships, the recent moon landing that just happened, and the reintroduction or the resurgence of osprey in Ireland. This is Eco Show. Hello and welcome to Eco Show. This is a show about ecology, the environment, news in that space, and things that are going on. I usually go over a thing of the week, which highlights some common thing in life, going into it a little bit deeper, and then talk about some recent research in the ecology ecosystem space, and then wrap up with some recent news from the past week and all that good stuff. So this week, our thing of the week are dandelions, and the genus is called Taraxacum, but we're going to be talking about one of these in particular. So there's a lot of dandelions, but then there's kind of one general one, which is the main one, which is called Taraxacum officinale. And the name for this is kind of in a little bit of debate. It Some people say that Taraxacum is a Arabic word or it's a combination of Greek words. And the Greek Taraxos, which is the first part of that Taraxacum, is disorder, and akos is remedy. And so it could be from an Arabic word, but it's kind of talking about it being as a remedy for disorders. And officinale is Latin for a workshop or pharmacy. So the name for dandelion in Latin is pointing to its importance for a lot of medicinal uses, and kind of a cool thing that I didn't know before this week, but dandelion is from, and I'm not going to pronounce this right. The way it looks is dandelion, but it's got to be like dandelion, which means lion's tooth in French. So there's some name factoids there. Here we have a nice little illustration of the dandelion. So you've got these cool yellow flowers, these little puff balls, and the leaves that have this nice serrated sort of edge. Kind of get where the lion's teeth name comes from. It's considered a weed in a lot of places now, but it was introduced around the world on purpose because it's really good for livestock feed. So it was, and it's really easily distributed around the world because of those little bits from the puff balls. They'll get into haystacks and they'll be easily distributed that way, or via the poo poo. They'll be getting through it and getting around the world. The origins of this one in particular, there are different dandelions around the world, and there are ones native to different regions, but the sort of most popular one in particular originates back into areas in Greece, or the Himalayas is sort of where it's estimated to be from, and that's from looking in the fossil record to see where the earliest point that it seems to appear is. And an issue with this one, this general dandelion, Taraxacum officinale, is that it will compete with or hybridize with local native dandelions. So there are dandelions around the world, and an issue with the spread of this is that it may outcompete local dandelions, and that's not good for our general diversity of species, but also because sometimes insects or animals have particular relationships that have been developed over long periods of time that may be disrupted by that change that's going on. It thrives in a whole bunch of conditions, which is why we see it so many places around the world. It spreads via wind and also via water and poop and just in general things. But yeah, it is valued for its feed quality for stock, and it has human medicinal uses. So we'll talk a little bit about those medicinal uses. And this is, this is not official advice. And the tricky thing with weeds and foraging is two main things. And the first issue is the most simple one, which is identification. And it takes time to really understand what different species are. So whenever you're going into foraging, you always really want to make sure you're double and triple checking whatever you're foraging. And there's lots of great forums online where you can take a photo of something you see, put up online, and people can verify or not verify what the thing is you're eating if you're really inclined. And the other issue is that we live in a world where there's lots of pollution, there's lots of historical pollution that sometimes we don't know about from old landfill sites. That you see this a lot of times, is that sometimes parks are built on top of old landfills and things like that. So we don't necessarily know what the underlying inputs are. There may be pollution, particularly roadside. You may see lots of weeds and things roadside. So always take a hefty amount of precaution whenever you're looking to do a little bit of foraging. But that being said, the dandelion is super cool because all parts of it are edible, to my understanding, and there's lots of pretty good vitamins in it. It's said to improve liver function, lower cholesterol, lower blood pressure, and obviously that's all, not official advice or whatever. Reducing inflammation, it may treat cancer. I'm making lots of claims. These are all things that I've read around and about, but those are kind of, people always say that about anything. You always see like improves liver function, which I'm not aware of. That's not something you experience necessarily really viscerally, like, ooh, my liver today, unless you've had a big night of drinking or something like that. So yeah, it's popular to be eaten as a salad green. You take those leaves, make it into green, and it's been used to make cheese in some cases because it can clot up dairy. You can cook the roots kind of like a carrot. You can boil it up until there will be a little outer skin that starts to fall off, and the roots are also used as a coffee alternative. I don't think there's any caffeine in it, but I guess it has a similar taste to coffee when it's roasted, and it will make you pee this root. So yeah, don't pick it from the roadside or anywhere where there may be pesticides or old landfills or things like that. But there's a whole world of plants around you, even if you're not in a. And so this is particularly if you're in cities. I think it's generally not super wise to forage in cities. You can just leave those plants to the bugs, leave them for the bugs to eat. But if you're ever out in some nice areas that are not being impacted by pollution, check it out. So that's our little highlight on the dandelion. Now we'll hop into our research section about Hyraxes. And this research by Vlad Demartsev et al. Is looking at Hyraxes and their calls, the sounds that they make. So I'll put up a video that will have the Hyrax call. Make sure your volume is down because they have kind of a scream that can be a bit loud. And what this research is looking at is how does their song rhythm impact their reproductive success. So it sounds like a scream, but they're calling it a song in this research. And they want to see, is there a relationship between the quality of singing and the quality being the consistency and sort of the pattern of the singing and the reproductive success. So this is important. They say just in their introduction, rhythmic stability is important for bodily function and it's important in courtship. So there are lots of different animals that do things that involve a rhythmic display. You can see this in birds or things like that. And what they're saying is that this is in some ways is showing if you're able to perform with rhythmic stability, it's showing that there's underlying bodily rhythmic stability, which may not really be the case, but that is what's going on in courtship. So they're looking to see if this was true in rock Hyraxes. Here's the video. And they did find that Hyraxes that sing more frequently have more offspring, and beyond that, the more rhythmically stable Hyraxes had more success. So that was some findings that they found, and is an interesting thing to think about. With that, here's a cute little photo of them. They look like they're kind of made up little animals. They're pretty cool. So these calls are important for them. For safety, they are really easily, well, not necessarily easily predated, but you can see them in a little rocky formation here in their native habitat. They're a tasty little treat for lots of predators, so these calls can have importance for a lot of different reasons. So that's our research highlight this week. So if you're out there trying to have high reproductive success, make sure your song rhythm is frequent and stable. You don't want a frequent and unstable screech call when you're out there trying to improve your reproductive success. But if you've got a great screeching mating signal, be sure to get out there and do it, you know. Okay, on to our news section now. Ships are using sails again, and this is kind of a jokey thing in some ways because obviously we had sails back in the day, but the capacity of modern ships outdoes those sails back in the day by a huge amount. So it's not like we could really go back to those ships, although it would be cool. But these sails that we've got here are wind wings, is what they're being called. So, not necessarily sails, and they're using some more of the aerodynamics that would be used in aviation. These are 100 feet high or 37 meters high and can be added retroactively onto older vessels and are purported to have 30% fuel savings on vessels. Now, from the article that I was seeing, I imagine this is probably an upper limit and probably is when you're really maximizing the wind behind you and things like that. They look pretty bulky. We'll show a photo here. They are pretty huge, so I don't I don't know if there's what the impact of that would be weight wise, but still up to 30% fuel savings is pretty cool, and especially if the industry is trying to move to sources of energy that don't rely on fossil fuels, making taking advantage of everything you can extra will be important because the switch to maybe an electrical only source would most likely need a little helping hand. So this thing rotates around. It can be stowed. The one issue that I saw with this, and I'll put up a little video again of this thing, is that it looks like it blocks a huge amount of the view of the deck. So I imagine a lot of navigation is more has a bit more computers in there and may not necessarily rely on just being able to see. But when you see these on the boat from the deck point of view, they're taking up a lot of the view. So could maybe lead to different designs of boats. I imagine you'd have a prioritize a different sort of design. But anyways, cool developments. And you love to see that kind of fuel saving. So this is just in a sort of prototype phase. I believe this is only on one. This may only be on one boat. We can see on the photo here that we've got. It's a partnership between Cargill, which does a lot of grain transport related work, and Mitsubishi, which is a big industry company. So that our second news piece from this week is that there was a moon landing by Chandrayaan 3, which is a that's the I think that's the name for the whole structure of the rocket. And they've successfully landed as only this is from India. They did this situation, and they're only the fourth country to land on the moon. Pretty cool. And they've gone to the lunar South Pole, which is an area that is perpetually cloaked in darkness in this in a crater, I believe. So it's pretty dark most of the time. They landed their lander, and they've got a little rover that's going around that's got, I believe, only a 2 week planned lifespan. It has a few different tools that they'll be using. They've got a seismometer to detect moon earthquakes. They've got a laser array, an ionosphere probe, and a thermophysical probe that will drill into the surface. So there's thought to be potentially ice at the bottom of these permanently shadowed craters on the moon. They've already managed to confirm the presence of sulfur, and the importance of finding water at these poles, and particularly a large water source, is that you could use it as an energy source. So you break down water into its component parts and you use the hydrogen as fuel. So this could make travel outward from the moon a bit easier if you're able to produce propellant there and shoot your way out into the universe, or to make return missions more possible. So keep an eye out for headlines around this. There will be some interesting findings for sure from this project. Very cool one. And here's a little image. We've got the lander here. Nice little design and a cute little rover that travels very slowly so as not to damage any of the materials on board. So they're really collecting a lot of information on this journey. It's always so cool to think of. I don't like the idea of there being space junk that we're putting on the moon, but because it's nice to think of it as pristine space, but it is, on the other hand, pretty amazing that we've gotten to the moon several times and that we're doing things out on it. It feels like we talk about the moon so much that it doesn't feel like an amazing thing, but then when you look up into the night sky and you're like, whoa, that's a pretty amazing thing to have done to get all the way up there. And our last news article, still up in the air, it's kind of themed, is that the osprey has been reported to be sighted and or seen in Ireland in the wild. The Irish name for osprey is Jaskare Carne, which is probably not a great pronunciation, but it means the tonsured fisherman, and a tonsure is like the Christian monks that would have the little bald bit. So it's kind of got a similar bald eagle kind of name. So it's a little called the fisherman. Osprey like to go and fish, and this is an important thing in its recovery. This is the first time in 250 years that it has been officially seen in Ireland. This is indicating that the ecosystem is stable enough for their habitat to support their presence there, and there's enough fish for them to eat. It's stable enough, healthy enough for their chicks to be hatching. Osprey are generally doing well around the world, which is good news, but they have been gone from Ireland for quite some time. So we'll give a nice warm welcome to the osprey being back in Ireland. Always lovely to hear that and see things coming back after many efforts to improve the environment and things like that, for animals to come back to places where they've been. And here's a cool photo of the Jaskare Carne. And I think the tonsured fisherman, I don't know. I think that's a little disrespectful, a little bit. This looks way cooler than a tonsure, you know what I'm saying? Unless this photo is just not correct for what they're looking like out there, but it looks more like the mohawked fisherman or something like that. I don't know. Anyways, that's our news, that's our research, and that's our thing of the week, all wrapped up in Eco News for Eco Show. So thanks for checking in, and we'll catch you all next time. Bye-bye.